Hey, this is John from Scopestack. Today I wanted to walk you through our workflow approval. So what I'm going to do first is actually walk you through into settings, what it looks like to set it up, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like practically being used inside of a project in an organization. So first, let's jump into settings. So you'll find approval workflow, whether this is your first time using Scopestack or you've been around for a while, it's all in the same place. So navigate down to project approval and settings, right? And so again, depending on your role, you should have access to this or not. Just to give you a little level set, our workflow approval is kind of built into 3 steps or components, if you will. So technical approval, sales, and business approval. Technical is really the QA step, right? So this is where you want to make sure that your subject matter experts are getting their eyes on projects that have services relevant to their area of expertise or their line of business. Maybe they're compensated based on services from certain lines of business being included in a statement of work. So, I've been caught many a time, not letting the right people know that there was a small switch in a large data center project, right? Or something like that. So workflow approval is a great way to set it up and make sure that the right people are getting involved. So let me show you a little bit deeper into technical approval. So again, as I mentioned, and I'll click into one, our technical approval is driven by lines of business. So if you're familiar with how services are set up, every service is associated to a service category, which is a subset of a line of business, right? And so whether it's networking or data center, like we have it built here, you can structure your data. And so if you're thinking about using approval workflow, that's something to consider is how do you want to make sure the right people are getting notified in your organization? So in this scenario, right, I'm setting up technical approval for anyone in networking practice. First thing is how many approvals are required, right? So I might have a group of 5 networking experts, but do I need all 5 to approve it? Do I just need 1? What we're showing here is 1. Next toggle is, hey, I might be a networking expert and I'm scoping out a project. Can I approve my own project? And so you have the ability to say yes or no. If that is not checked, right? If I'm involved in the statement of work process, meaning I was a pre-sales engineer, I was a collaborator, I actually need someone external to myself in that role to approve this project. And again, team approval, right? Do you want to restrict this to that particular team? So just more granularity there. And what it looks like is, adding additional users. So, who needs to be an approver, and is it required from this particular person? If I don't toggle that, then I have it, set as optional. So, again, who may approve these, required or not, right? And so that's the same across every line of business. So you can build that out. Sales approval. So you can see it's much more. There's one button, right, for sales approval. Do you want them to be involved or not? So say I turn that on, a sales executive will be inserted into the approval workflow process in between the technical step and the business step. The reason we put them there is because of their role, they have the ability to not change. They can't change level of effort. They can't change what services are in scope, governance, anything like that. They literally have the ability to adjust the overall project revenue. And depending on how they move that revenue, right, will dictate whether it's a GP percentage or a revenue number that, right, drives a certain approval workflow on the business side after that. So if you have a $10,000 project, they say, oh, this is only going to be $5,000 and my GP tanks to 15%. Well, we'll have toggles set up on the business approval step that says if we have low margin projects that are essentially not where we want to target the business, then I need to get business approval to do that. So again, going into business approval, right? So you can build different rules and you can layer them on top of each other. So right now we have one in here that says contract costs greater than $10,000. So that was the name of the approval rule. Here's the project value that we're evaluating against. So as you can see, there are a lot of different options in terms of, what are those data points on a project that we need to trigger on as a business to make sure that we're sending out quality work and we're not, putting ourselves at risk. Right. So again, this one is contract cost. And we said, hey, is it greater than, less than or whatever, and a certain variable or value to test. And again, at this step, so I could list, 5 people down at the bottom. And what I'm saying here is I just need one person to approve this. So again, am I required to approve it? No. but I'm the only one on the list and I need one. Therefore, I have to approve the project. So you can layer additional levels of approval workflow on it. So say I'm a manager and the project is, $50,000 in revenue. I have approval authority up to $50,000. Anything over that needs to get me and my boss involved. That's just a simple example, something that, I used to do. So that's the setup of the project approval workflow. It's a really great and kind of valuable, very valuable part of the Scopestack experience. And so let me walk you through what it looks like in a project that we already started scoping out and just show you kind of how that is triggered. So I'll go to my projects list and I'll just choose a project. And again, you can see the status of any project here in the projects list. And so that status is driven by the project approval workflow motion, right? And you can subscribe to webhooks. So like when a project hits a certain status, right? As you can see here, the status right now is building, which is just pre-sales engineer is involved in scoping out the project. It has not gone through the approval process yet. All right, so I've added all my services. I feel good about this project. I need to get it approved, right? So if I click generate now, I'll get a draft watermark PDF because I toggled on something in settings that said before a project gets approved, I want a draft watermark PDF, right? I don't want someone sending out executable statements of work to clients before we get our eyes on it. Now that might be able to auto approve because it didn't hit certain thresholds and you're okay taking a risk sending out $5,000 projects or whatnot. But you start sending out $50,000, $100,000 projects on a fixed fee basis, right? You want to make sure you get additional eyes on that project. All right, so I'm going to request approval on this project. And so you'll see a couple of things trigger. One, you'll see that the status of this moved to technical approval. And so that's the workflow approval step that I'm currently in. Quick caveat before I show you that, as we're in the approval process, every project gets locked down. So now I don't have the ability to go to services and add more services or change a bunch of things or do anything like that because you don't want anyone changing things mid-flight as part of the approval process. That's how we get ourselves in problems and trouble, and it's miscommunication, and it's just a bad scenario. So what you'll see here is if I click on, approvals, you'll see that this is currently in version 1. And it's in the technical approval step. The reason it's in technical approval is because we had data center networking services added to this project, and I was identified as an approver in both of those areas. All right, so I had networking services and data center. I got an email that said, hey, you're added for technical approval. Here's a link to the project. Please go review and approve it. Now, one thing to point out as well is I can ad hoc add anyone at any point in time at the approval step. Right. So if I wanted to come in here and say, I wanted John to approve a project and he's optional, but I want to add him to the project. Well, then ad hoc, he'll get an email that says you need to come approve this project. And you can do that at any step of the approval process. So again, I'm at the technical approval step. Let me go in and approve this project. So I'll click on, I can make some comments. Great work. And I can say, hey, this is great from a technical standpoint. Go ahead, right? I could have also declined it, and I'll go back to the scope creator, say, hey, this project's been declined. But for now, I'll go ahead and click approve. And what should happen is it will evaluate if we need to go to a next step of approval. So right here, I can tell you that it didn't because it didn't meet certain revenue thresholds. So if you remember, if our cost, I think our total contract cost or something like that had to be $5,000, and so it didn't trigger on that. But if I went in here and I'll just add a bunch of services. So what you'll also see is once this is an approved project, right, I also still can't add services to my project. I can't change anything about this. If I wanted to make some changes and go through the approval process again or had some communication with my client, I can click rescope. What will happen here is now we have a new version number, right? So we're actually working on version 2. And then I can make those changes. So again, I want to trigger, add, a bunch of stuff in here just to trigger business approval. So let's say this is going to take 100 hours of client interviews. That sounds like fun. And go back to my project, and I'm going to submit this for approval again. So again, request approval, re-triggers, locks down the project. getting email notifications. If I click in my approvals view, now you'll see that we're working on version 2, right? So this is a great way to say, hey, something changed, new version. Okay, we need to get this approved again. Same thing, came back to me. Yep, I see that we are going to do client interviews for about a year. Approve. Now what you'll see is a business approval step, right? So it came to me because our contract cost is greater than $10,000. So same flow, have the ability to approve, decline, but I also can say, hey, go back a step and adjust the scope, right? Or adjust the price. So we don't need to restart all the process. Maybe I just want to go back one step. I can do that. At the same time, from a business approval standpoint, I can ad hoc add anyone, right? So say I had a technical approver and I want to make sure that they are at the business step 2. They're a senior leader, very technical, but they understand the business. So I can also add them at this step and make them required if I need to. So again, I'm going to go ahead and approve this again. Again, this is version 2. So when I generate the document, it'll show version 2 on it. And again, you can always come back into versions and track those changes between each flavor. That's our project approval workflow. Walk you through setting it up in settings, walk you through what it looks like in reality, working through a project. And so if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to our team at support@scopestack.io. If you want to work with our technical sales team and get on a demo and dive through this and see how it would work for your business, we'd be glad to get on a call there too. So you can just reach out to sales@scopestack.io. Thanks again for your time.